All right, friends, welcome to Rugged Outdoors Guide. My name is Pete, and today we're going to be talking about something that I think is helpful for you guys who are just starting out in the outdoors, kind of outdoor adventuring world. This is not for veterans. If you've been canoeing and camping for decades, I can learn something from you. That's probably a given. But like most of my videos, I'm talking to those of you who are just kind of getting your feet wet. Maybe you just bought a canoe. You're just interested in starting canoe camping, and you're going to be portaging, and so there's certain considerations. And one of those considerations, which has been on my mind for about 45 years, is because I like to go fishing when I'm on canoe trips. That's actually my main reason for going, other than the beautiful environment. I like to go fishing. Well, but what do I bring with me to fish in terms of, fishing rod, yes, but specifically tackle? Like, what do I have in my tackle box, and what does my tackle box look like? Do I bring a big, huge tackle box like I might if I were on my bass boat, for example, or, in a tournament where you bring like 7 tackle boxes that are about as big as you can possibly carry? They look like suitcases. Or do you do what my dad did, which on every canoe trip he took took this little guy. This thing can only hold a few lures, but it is a tackle box, and it will do the trick for holding your lures, and you can put this in your pocket. So what's the best approach? I have some ideas, but let me just show you what I have over 40-something years of collecting fishing lures and tackle boxes. Man, I just have so much stuff, and most of it I never, like 99% of it probably, or 95%, I never use. Check this out. So here's one of my tackle boxes. It just has random kind of lures scattered around. It's kind of unused, so there's like empty spaces and stuff that I don't really use. And then anyway, here is another sort of a different style. It's just a kind of a small, thin box, kind of like the one I just showed you, like this one here, but it's a little bit bigger, and there's a lot of soft lures in there. And then that's just a junky old one that's an antique box. And then I've just got other random, that's a box filled with, got that from the dollar store. And then more soft lures, or jig bodies, tube jig bodies mostly for panfish. And then there's more, like another little box like this for, again, panfish. And then there's these. This is my bigger fish, 3-tray box that had a lot of my pike lures. And then I've got everything in there from weight scales to fish scents, like to track them. And then this is just one of my first tackle boxes I had years and years ago. Again, just random stuff. There's even, this is a piece of metal, like a stainless steel, and you're supposed to rub it on your hands like a bar of soap. That's why it looks like a bar of soap, sort of. And it's supposed to get rid of all the nasty smells that you have on your hands. So I don't think it even really works. There's so many things. Specialty lures that, attract the fishermen more than they attract the fish. So I don't use most of this stuff at all. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what I use and why. So we'll start off I'm just going to show you right off the bat. I have, when I go on canoe camping trips, let me see if I can shut this. The box that I use is this one. All right, so it's not a huge box. It's only got one tray inside. And there you're looking at it on the top. And then I can't really open it with one hand. Let's see if I can use my... Nope. Yep. Okay. I'm going to go through real quick what I have inside my box and why I think it's a good idea for you guys, if you're just starting out, to maybe do the same. Okay, so here is my tackle box again. And let me just tell you a couple of quick things before I get into the very detailed specifics of what I have inside on probably 90% of my trips. First of all, I have a box this size. Here it is again, closed. It's made by Flambeau, but it doesn't matter. Old Pal makes boxes like this, and there's a bunch of others, but it's one of their smallest, aside from the kind that you put in your pocket, right? This is not meant for that, but it only has one tray. And the reason that I don't use, excuse me a sec, this kind of box is because I have a bunch of things that I want to bring with me that make fishing a little more efficient. And I'll put up with some of the inconvenience, I guess, if you want to put it that way, of having a larger box. So that's the reason I don't have the little kind. My dad didn't really care. He just dragged anything behind the boat with his, you know, old like fishing rod from about 50 years ago. He didn't really care that much. But I treat it a little bit more like a science, and there are things that I want to bring with me. Plus, there are things in here that are not directly related to fishing, and of course, you can't carry anything in those little tiny boxes that are not directly related to fishing. So, like an extra knife, for example. So I'll get to that in a second. The other thing you need to know before we get into this is that what I have in here will change according to where I'm going, what type of species I'm fishing for. That's kind of the I don't know, elephant in the room, if you want to call it that. It depends on what you're going for and for how long. What I'm going to show you today is a specific one that I usually bring with me when I canoe in Northern Ontario, up here in Canada, where there is mostly bass, largemouth, smallmouth bass, and walleye. Which are often called pickerel, believe it or not, up here. But that's kind of the main sport fish that I go for. Now, there are areas that are mostly trout of various sorts. Like up in Algonquin Park, people go there when they go fishing. They always talk about trout, trout, trout. And in fact, in Algonquin Park, there are no pike. And I like fishing for pike. So I will have some provisions for pike fishing in here and different lures, but mostly for walleye and bass, right? So that's something to keep in mind. Where are you going? What type of fish species are there? How long are you going? And what are your priorities on that trip? Most of my priorities are fishing, really, and getting to the next camp spot. So anyways, I will get into, I'm going to show you a close-up of what I have in my box, and I'm going to explain why I have each of those items. Okay, let's get into it. First of all, we'll touch base with what's in the tray on top. So I have a variety of lures, of course, but what I have here, it's pretty limited, and that's by design. So over here on the left side here, I have some plugs. Yes, there we go. So I have a deep diving plug down here, and then I have a jointed Rapala and a non-jointed Rapala. Just because, for some variety. This has been probably the jointed Rapala. I have one that in another box somewhere that has like a black back on it, but it doesn't really matter. It's been one of probably the single most successful lure over my 40 years of fishing is this one. And it's great for trolling when you don't want anything to go down deep, because you don't know what's underneath you and how many times you're going to get caught. So you just kind of keep it near the surface. This is a floating Rapala, and it only goes like just a couple of feet, if that, under the water. And overall it's probably the most successful lure that I have. Next to that, of course, I have a floating but diving Shad Rap Rapala. It's really beat up. It's coming apart here because it's got pike teeth injuries all over it. So again, another very successful lure. The only reason I have this one as opposed to any other one is because the deep diving is from, the lip causes it to dive deep, and so it's not super great for trolling unless you're going really slow, but the body is very, very buoyant and it pops up to the top. And so I sometimes actually fish this plug as a top water lure. I'll just twitch it and it'll pop back up and then twitch it again, and that often elicits a strike from a feeding bass. So love that lure as well. And then just for variety, I've just got a spoon in case I know they're great for pike, and if I happen to come across some pike, I'll use that. But even just for variety, and it's small and light, so it doesn't take up much room. And then over here, I actually have a couple of snag-free or weedless lures, which I will use when there's lots of weeds, and of course I'm going for bass. So again, on some of my trips there are no weeds, and I don't actually use those at all. So it's just kind of an all-around average. One of the things that I use a lot of, I have to admit, is plastic worms. All right, just like this. Very, very successful for me. I typically don't use them with any weights. So here's a typical rig that I have. These are just more colored bodies, but here's a rig which is just a hook that is meant specifically for rigging a plastic worm. So it kind of goes around, and then the hook goes right along the parallel with the body. You can even hide it if you're confident in your hook setting abilities, and you just kind of let it settle, you know, like just sink slowly, and then you twitch it along through lily pads or whatever, because again it's mostly weedless, so you can go through the grasses and all that sort of thing. And then of course for walleye, most of what I've just explained to you has been mostly when I'm bass fishing, but of course I've got jigs, quite a number of them in here for walleye. At the bottom of rapids, for example, on a river, it's almost 100% chance in Northern Ontario you're going to find walleye in the pool at the base of the rapids on a fairly remote river. So I've just got different sizes of jigs and different weights. And then of course I've got another plug, a larger floating Rapala, and in here, in the front here, I've got leaders for bass or pike fishing. If I come across pike, I don't usually come across them before I come across bass, but on some lakes there are lots of pike, and so I don't want to just tie my lure directly to my line, because pike teeth will just come and they'll bite it right off. So I use these small and virtually invisible. Check this leader out. I know you look, it's you know, here, you can, I'll hold it over here even. You can't even see it. Like, I can hardly see it with my own eyes, but it's there. It's a wire leader, and it'll protect from bite-offs from pike. So great thing to have. In fact, you probably have that even for bass fishing. So that's kind of what I use for lures for most of my trips. But again, that'll change according to if I'm going to Algonquin Park, where there's mostly trout, and I'll just swap out some of these lures for something more trout-worthy, smaller jigs, smaller rubber plastic baits, and maybe a couple of small spinners and spoons. You'll notice I don't have any spinners because I don't like the fact that it often messes up my line. And so I find I can be just as successful without them. Okay, so what else is in my box down here? Well, this is no particular order, but I'm just going to pull items out as I explain them. I have a first aid kit. Sometimes it's my only kit that I bring. Sometimes I do have another small one like this in my canoe pack. But anyway, so it's a first aid kit. Then I have an extra knife. Okay, so this is not even my main knife. It's just kind of an all-around extra camp knife. This one's pretty chunky from Kershaw. I can use this one for batoning, batoning wood even. And so it's a pretty tough knife. So anyway, I will bring that one along with me. And then I have down here an emergency blanket. So this is just one of these things, I've never used it, but it was really inexpensive and it's really light. And it's just, it looks like, you can kind of see it there. It's like plastic, and it's really for an emergency, like if you're freezing to death or whatever, or you just, I don't know, something, you've just lost some gear. This can be used to wrap yourself up at night, and it will keep in quite a bit of heat. Don't know how super efficient it is. I've never actually used it in an emergency situation, but it's so small and light that I don't mind bringing it along. You can hardly even feel it in terms of weight. Then I have an extra lighter. This is not even my main lighter. This is just a cheap little dollar store butane lighter, which I found works really well. So I bring another one along with me as my main one. This is just a backup. I also have some fire starters in a Ziploc bag. So these, you just light them up and they'll like a cube of it, not a cube, but just a wafer will stay lit for, you know, I think it's about 10 minutes or so. So it'll really help in terms of fire starting. I bring this along, which is not really necessary. I wouldn't go out and buy one if you don't already have one, but it's, again, so light, it almost feels like air. And what it is just a hook sharpener. So it's got grooves in it. It's made by Rapala. And so just because, you know, you want sharp hooks, right? And oftentimes I'm getting my hooks snagged and everything, and they will get dull. And on this side is just one of these things, you don't really need this, but oftentimes when you buy a jig, the area where you tie your line to, the loop at the front, the eye, will have paint over it. And this thing, you just kind of go over it, and it's got a little point here that you put it in that eye, and it clears out the paint. Again, not something I use all the time, but I do sharpen my hooks often enough, so bring that along. Speaking of sharpening, I do have a knife sharpener. This one's by Speedy Sharp. Again, small, light, and I use it sometimes, but again, so light that I almost don't even notice I have it. I bring a pair of pliers. I have needle nose, and I find that with the curve at the end, it's just I have this pair, so I bring it along. It's great for dislodging a hook, especially in a pike where you don't want to rip your fingers apart, shoving your fingers into its mouth. But even for any fish that's got you know, that's swallowed the lure a bit farther than just its up, you know, lips. It really helps. And of course, it's just a tool for other stuff you might do around camp as well. Getting to the end of it, I have in here just a container that I have, and these are little snap swivels. So snap swivels are just, you would tie your line to them, and then the swivel itself is what you would hook onto your lures. And it just prevents you from tying and untying and tying and untying all the time, right? So I just use snap swivels. I have in here a fish lure in terms of like something that I put on the lure to maybe hide my own human hand smell and make it smell more like a bait fish. This one's called Crappie Buster. There's so many. I mean, I've got a dozen different options here just in my garage where I store all my fishing equipment. But this one's small enough, and you just kind of squeeze a little bit. It's in a tube, and you squeeze a bit on your lure, and it's supposed to help. Don't know for sure if it does. And then getting towards the end of what I have here, I just have a small compass just in case. I almost never use it. Again, small, light. It's almost like I don't even have it. It weighs like air. So, but it is there in case there is an emergency. And then I happen to bring, you don't need these, this is totally optional, but again, small and light for me. I bring scissors. Far easier to snip your line and do precise work when you're tying on leaders and snipping them off and retying things. Far more precise and easier to use than a knife, all right? But a knife will definitely do the trick. So that really is all that I bring with me, and it pretty much fills up the entire box itself. So let me see if I can put this stuff back here. So I know that this kind of went here. I think I had my lighter back there. That goes in here. This. And then this. So that gets pretty close to filling up the box itself. There is a little bit of extra room, and that is also by design. I throw different things in there. One of the things I often throw in here are paddling gloves. but you know, I can throw them anywhere else as well. Whatever's more convenient, I will use. And so that's one of the things. I leave a tiny little bit of space for anything else. Otherwise, it's fairly full. And honestly, I wouldn't want to bring anything less than that in my tackle box. And so there it is. There is my Flambeau tackle box. And just to kind of give you an idea of sort of the bigger picture when I'm paddling, when I portage, I actually carry this and my fishing rod. Now, I didn't get into what I bring is for a rod, but it's just a spinning reel with a 6-foot medium action rod, and it's you know, it breaks down. I often bring a telescoping one, but I have another one that I like better that just breaks into 2 and easy to carry. So what I do is I will actually hold this in one hand while I'm also holding my rod in this hand. And then in my other hand, I'll have maybe, if I bring a net with me, I might have a net and a paddle. I still carry my paddle. I've got a bent shaft paddle, and so I can stick it in my canoe, but it's just as easy for me to grab it and carry it instead of strapping it in to make just to save, like, you know, 30 seconds or whatever. So this will be in one hand along with my rod. I'll bring my paddle and you know, maybe a net if I have one, which I don't usually bring it anymore. And that's it. And then on my back, of course, I'll be carrying my large dry bag. So it's like 100 liter. It's a pretty big one. And so that's one trip. And again, to summarize, this is not for you veterans who have your own way of doing things. You might even have a way better way of doing things. In fact, if you do, please do give me your comments below. Just say, hey, listen, that's okay, you know, I guess, but here's what I would do, and here's why I do what I do when I'm fishing. This is what I bring, etc., etc. I'd like to hear your ideas, because I don't talk to a lot of people about this. I'm telling you what I do, but I don't know what everyone else does out there. So yeah, do let me know. Also, keep in mind that I love fishing, and so I bring something this big. If you're not so much into fishing, you might bring a really tiny little ultralight fishing rod and reel and a little tiny tackle box with like 5 lures in it just for fun, even if you ever bother to decide to go fishing while you're on a canoe trip. For me, it's a given. I definitely will go fishing every evening, usually every morning. It's just what I like to do. So guys, everything in here is maximized for multi-use and efficiency. And speaking of multi-use and efficiency, I would be remiss if I did not tell you about something that has the ultimate efficiency and multi-use in my canoe bag, and that is something that looks like this. It is a Topquilt / Poncho / mummy sleeping bag from a company called One Wind. Now, this is not a company that you hear about all the time. It's not a household name, and so I did some research before I got a hold of this Topquilt, and it's not only a really legitimate company, but they respond to customer service issues really quickly and efficiently. So hats off to you, One Wind. Okay, so what exactly is this? Let's take a look at it in some detail, and I'll tell you all about the technical specifications and how you can use this to replace a bunch of stuff that you probably already have in your gear kit. Okay, so what is this thing exactly? Is it a blanket? Is it a sleeping bag? Well, it's actually all of the above. Let me just show you something here. This is a top quilt that is meant to be used, kind of wrap around your body in a hammock, but can also be used in a tent. It can be used out under the stars, whatever you need it for. In fact, honestly, I use this thing in my house. My wife uses it as well because it is super, super warm. Check this out. So you can just throw it over yourself like a poncho, and it kind of does up as you've seen, and you can kind of walk around with it like this. And you can even, you've even got some fair use of your arms. But specifically, what is it? Well, it looks like a blanket when you get it. It's in a stuff sack, as you saw earlier, and it's just kind of a blanket that's slightly tapered to one end. But here are some of the really unique features of it. First of all, it's incredibly warm for its weight. Now, I'll get into some of the technical specs in a bit, but if you were to replace down or replace the filling from DuPont in here, which I'll tell you about in a second, but if you were to replace it with down, it would be maybe as warm, but it wouldn't be as efficient as this. This is incredibly warm and incredibly light, plus it doesn't bunch in areas like down might. Plus, if it does get wet, it's not going to be ruined or virtually ruined like down would be. So overall, or already, this thing is looking better for as a blanket, or it could be kind of like a winter coat if you need it to be. But let's see what else it does. There's more. On one end, the tapered end, you can actually snap the ends of it together. So now it's kind of gone around and snapped on itself. And then what you've got is a couple of strings here. You pull it tight, and of course you got to make these guys nice and tight. And now what you've got is, I guess you can call it a toe box. That's the official name for it. But if you snap along the edges here, instead of a zipper, it has right along the edge all the way down, it has snaps. And so they function very much like a zipper. But here's what happens now. What I have just made while you've been watching is basically a mummy sleeping bag. See, here's the end, and it's cinched in. So now that's where you would put your feet, and then the rest of it is exactly like a sleeping bag, right? It's wide enough to envelop you and just kind of like encircle you, and then you can snap it shut. So perfect sleeping bag. But oh, did you realize I had it as a item of clothing a few seconds ago? It was a winter coat, for crying out loud. Okay, so what are some of the technical specifications of the One Wind Topquilt Poncho? Well, it's as far as size goes, there's a couple of different sizes. This one is 86 inches by 55 inches with a taper towards the toe end. It does come in another size, which is 78 inches by 55, but I would just stick with the bigger size. No reason not to, really. It does have a slight taper, as I mentioned, which really helps it fit perfectly like a mummy bag when it's cinched in. It is 2.3 pounds in weight. That's insane. That's really, really low. So way to go. Another, notch for One Wind. It's rated for like 35 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Not sure why the range, but it doesn't matter. It's going to fit most of our applications in, the summertime anywhere from the Midwest US to northern Canada in most cases. Okay, so what's it made out of? Well, it's made out of what they call 20 denier ultra lightweight nylon taffeta fabric. That's the exterior. And DuPont Sorona filling. You know what it's made from? It's made from corn. But the crazy thing is about this is that it's just as warm, at least I've been able to figure, it's just about as warm as down, but it's way more versatile because I mentioned earlier it doesn't get ruined from being wet. And it's less expensive, of course, than down. It gives you the same thing. Even more even heat distribution than down. I mean, it's all upside for this material from DuPont rather than down. While it's not waterproof, it is water resistant. So it does repel water to an extent. Just don't stick it under, pouring rain all night long or whatever, right? You get the idea. So it does give you some benefit in repelling water to an extent. And of course, guys, as I mentioned before, you guys know this is a mummy bag. It's a poncho, and it's a great blanket. And I did mention as well, I feel like I want to repeat myself, but I wear it inside the house more often than outside the house because I'm not always camping. And my wife loves it. She just curls up with it in front of the TV, and then when I'm working on the computer, I throw it over my shoulders because the temperature in my office, which is in the basement, it varies during the day, right? So you're gonna want some, especially in the winter time, it does actually get cold down there while it's warmer upstairs. And so instead of trying to mess around with the power heating and trying to redirect heat to one area instead of another and all that, I just throw this on and it feels nice, and it's super, super warm very quickly. Within about 5 seconds, less than that, you can feel the heat building up around you. So I mentioned some of the reasons that you would choose this thing over down. And of course, price is one of the big things, but also it's washable, it's quick to dry, unlike down, it's water resistant, unlike down, and it's actually warmer than down for its weight and size. Yeah, for real. So as far as I'm concerned, there's really no downside to getting this Topquilt over a down sleeping bag or any other blanket that you can find that's down filled. And of course, if you compare this particular Topquilt to any other blanket that's not like filled with something like down and looking like this one, then it's just not going to be as warm. Like, what's an example? Well, if you had a fleece blanket, for example, it's simply not going to be anywhere near as warm as this. I can't even think of anything else other than sleeping bags that you get at Walmart or whatever, and they have their own stuffing, which is, you know, better than not having any, but they're usually bulkier than this for the same rating of temperature. So this is all around, this is probably your best value for any product in its class. So now you know why I said this is efficient and it's multi-use. Case closed. All right, guys, and as you can see, this is a blue poncho Topquilt blanket. A lot of them are, I think the more popular color actually is like a military green. Doesn't matter, I just wanted the blue. So you got those options from One Wind. You can check out where to get one of these if you're interested, even just researching it. Check it out down at the, I've got links down below in the description. You can check out the good folks at One Wind. You can also check it out on Amazon. Right, the links are there, and please do take advantage of those. Would very much appreciate that. Guys, if you appreciate videos like this, please do give us a like and a subscribe, and make sure you check us out on Instagram, as well as we do YouTube Shorts as well, and of course on Facebook. So we got lots of ways that you can check us out, and we would be thrilled to connect with you on any one of those media. Right? Thanks so much for watching, guys. You know what I'm going to say now, right? Get out there, buy one of these, of course, if you want to be efficient and multi-use, and get out there. Enjoy God's creation and keep on looking up.